Welcome to another episode of Jay Leno's Garage. You know, if you've been to this website before, you know we love experimenting with alternative forms of transportation. Electric vehicles, the Baker Electric, you've seen that, the Chevy Volt, we've done any number of electric cars. But today we got something completely different that I think will probably revolutionize public transportation, at least here in California, an electric bus. This is George Karbowski. George, how you doing?
I'm doing real good. How are you,
You're in charge of this whole electric bus thing, right?
This is my baby.
And now, this is not just a bus converted with an electric motor and it goes 10 miles and whatever it is. This is a ground-up electric vehicle.
Completely electric.
Right.
In fact, the California Air Resources Board was very concerned that we were going to use some other technologies that would produce emissions. They even talked about tailpipe emissions, and I go, well, you know, it doesn't have a tailpipe. Would you like us to put one on?
Yeah, right, exactly.
So it's completely zero emission. Uses some very unique things, new to the transit industry, a lot of electric drive components, electric drive air compressor, hydraulic pump, a completely electric HVAC unit that uses electric grid heating. That's very unique to the industry.
Now, before you turn off going, it's just a bus, I want to watch this, just stay with us here. There's a lot of really interesting new technology in this bus. This weighs about, what, half the weight of a...
Well, it's about 7,000 pounds less because it is a composite structure bus.
Right, so it's not a steel chassis. This is all basically...
It's fiberglass and actually balsa wood core, and they use vacuum to draw resin through the balsa wood, so it's a very solid structure. In fact, if you ran a 3,000-pound car into the side of this at about 30 miles an hour, the car would have the engine somewhere in the front seat, and we'd likely have to fix the decals.
And we're going to do that in just a minute. I'm going to take a 3,000-pound car. No, we won't do that. But it's pretty amazing. But the really cool thing about this is the charging system. The way that, and this bus, this is not something experimental. This bus has been in use, what, for a year?
Actually, in 2 days, it'll be a year.
Okay, and of course, it can run 24 hours a day. And being electric, your maintenance is just about nil. There's no oil to change or anything of that nature.
That's right.
And of course, you have zero emissions. And then people go, yeah, but you're making electricity from a coal-fired power plant. How do you get around that?
Well, actually, that's one of the biggest attractions, and having done projects like this before, I said, we need to find a way to provide renewable energy. So I talked to Southern California Edison. They got a great portfolio, but we couldn't guarantee it. So what we do is we buy renewable energy credits through the Department of Energy, and all of the electricity we use off the grid is being replaced by renewable energy. And in fact, we're using energy that's created by wind power someplace in Kansas.
Now, the cool thing they've done here, and this is something even Tesla was not able to do with their $180,000 sports car. You've got a 2-speed transmission, correct?
That's correct.
Now, we had an early Tesla here with a 2-speed, and because electric engines make so much torque, the transmissions were just disintegrating, basically. So they went to a 1-speed, and almost every electric car, including, I think, the Nissan Leaf and all these others, just have basically 1 speed, and that's fine. But when you're moving literally tons and tons of people, there's an advantage to having a low and a high gear.
Well, and actually, you'll get a kick out of this. The 2-speed transmission that we used really wasn't designed for regenerative braking. You need to have thrust in both directions.
Right.
So, shortly, a new transmission that's actually an adaptation of a 6-speed Corvette transmission built by Borg Warner is going to go into this, and we're going to have a 3-speed transmission. So we're looking forward to that being adapted to it shortly.
Yeah, I mean, what you're looking here is almost like a lot of Formula One technology in this bus. In the composites, where's that piece of composite? Let's show.
Actually, right inside here.
Okay. Come on in the bus. Oh, here we go. Here's a piece of it here.
This is a cutout of the structure of the bus, and what you'll see here is a layer of fiberglass, layer of balsa wood that's impregnated with resin, and another layer of fiberglass. This technology was developed for the U.S. Navy for patrol boats to make a very light and very strong chassis. And in fact, there is no steel components to this chassis except for the suspension. It's all...
I remember when I was a kid, we used to read about President Kennedy, PT-109. That was a plywood boat.
A plywood boat, right.
But this was basically the same sort of thing. Light balsa wood with this fiberglass. Now, if this was a chunk of steel, obviously it would be 2 to 3 times what this weighs, but this doesn't weigh anything really.
Now, the advantages of this type of technology is, first of all, it's lighter weight. And when it was originally brought into the bus market in the mid-90s, the idea was to try and reduce the weight of the bus so you could use a smaller engine and reduce emissions. In this bus, it's so we can put more batteries on board.
Right.
The second part of it is corrosion resistance, which is one of the reasons is this structure will probably last longer than an expected 12-year lifetime. It'll probably go 18 to 20 years very easily. But one of the most important things is that for an electric bus, it's non-conductive. And when we did the original testing, you know, we're running high voltage through here, and people were concerned, well, will it short out or whatever? Well, no, the bus it's plastic. It's non-conductive.
And the cool thing you don't even think about is, if you've ever been to a bus garage, you notice there are giant fans using tremendous amounts of power to suck all the diesel fumes and everything out of the bus when it's in the garage or if it's idling. We're in my shop right now and this bus is running, but because it's electric, it's not emitting anything, and obviously you don't need all that stuff.
That's correct.
Need, you don't need the fluids, the oils. It's pretty amazing technology, and a lot of it is all right in here as well. What's in all these?
Well, actually what you're looking at here in these compartments is all of the components that we call our smart bus system. It includes our GPS system, it includes a DVR for our camera system, it includes automatic people counters, count people coming on and off the bus. So this is all the high-tech stuff in that box.
And you know, this is not a prototype. This is one of those deals where when it's finished it'll have this, and when we get done with it it'll do this. This has been in service here in California now for well over a year, and it runs 24 hours a day. And of course, being electric, as I said, there's almost zero maintenance. We're going to drive it in just a little bit, but let's go outside and let's show you the engine and everything in the back, or what we call an engine.
Open sesame.
Well, let's open up the back and see the mill.
The mill. Well, the first thing let me point out to you at the back of this business end of the bus is you don't see rear windows in transit buses anymore. And why is that? Because it's filled up with the air conditioning and these fuel tanks and everything. So this is pretty unique. This goes back 20 or 30 years since the last time we had a rear window in the bus. So kind of cute, and people have actually commented on that. So let's take a look and see what makes this thing run. Not a lot of competition in the engine compartment. In fact, some of this stuff was actually, the cradle was designed for a fuel cell. But what we have here is a 200 horsepower UQM motor.
So we have one single motor. You don't have a motor in each wheel. There's a lot of...
And for me as a bus operator, that's very attractive because all of the running gear in this bus is really conventional bus stuff. The only technology involved here are the batteries and the drive system.
Right.
It's hooked up to a standard rear end through that 2-speed gearbox you talked about earlier. We have an onboard fire suppression system, and if you take a look here, you can see the end of it, and you see that little sensor with the green light?
Right.
That is an optical system. It actually looks at 2 ranges of infrared light. That system is actually adapted from the M1A1 tank to guard the crew against a shell coming into the crew compartment.
Very cool. Yeah, let's open up the side here.
All right.
Now that 2-speed transmission, I imagine that's a fluid drive, correct?
No, actually, it's a 2-speed gearbox that was adapted from off-road applications, and you know, as we talked about earlier, that's going to be changed. But no, it's a pretty standard drive, but not designed for regenerative braking.
Oh, I see. Okay, but it's not a fluid.
No, it's not. It's a standard gearbox.
Okay. Oh, very cool.
What we're looking at here are the house batteries, and by the way, all the dome lights and everything that are operating now are not operating off the drive batteries. They're operating off conventional battery system.
And do this obviously charges through an alternator when there's something when the bus is moving, or no?
It actually charges through an inverter.
Oh, I see. It doesn't. Okay. So they're total loss, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the single most important thing about this bus that differs from electric buses is this incorporates a fast charge unit. Well, on the top of this bus, there is a connection for the bus to drive into a charge station located in the middle of the line where it autonomously docks and charges the batteries.
Because that's the biggest problem. Most people would say, oh, I have a Nissan Leaf or I have an electric car, and if I go 30 or 40 miles, I'm down for 8 hours or 14 hours if I'm on 110 volts. How am I going to, how can you run 30? Do you run 30 miles, you shut down for the day? But your charging time is how long?
It'll take the batteries from a 20% to a 95% charge in less than 10 minutes. Okay. Now, and most of the time, we'll charge for short periods of time, so we don't always even use the 10 minutes.
So how many, in that 30-mile route, how many charging stations like we just saw would you have?
Well, it's actually about almost 18 miles round trip. There's one charge station with an adapter for northbound and an adapter for southbound right in the middle.
Oh, I see. Okay, very cool. So, and it's just about 10 minutes. So that's about what a driver would take on his break, something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, very cool.
So that's the single most important thing. And by the way, this bus operating on that line, which, operating in a system, will operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week without any need to return to the shop to charge. And
And that's what I think is the cool thing. And this is, again, not some pie in the sky deal, because we have had a lot of people come by here with various electric vehicles. And when we go into production, blank will happen. And when it's finished, we'll be able to do this. And for some reason, it never seems to happen. Electricity, there's so many false promises with it over the years. It's hard to get people excited because they've been sort of ripped off over the years. But you've been running this for a year. How many miles on this particular bus? Any idea?
This particular bus, I believe, has about 7,000 miles on it.
Okay, all right. So you're only going 30 miles a day. At what's your average speed? 16?
Well,
18?
actually, our average speed on that line is probably in the neighborhood of 9 to 11 miles an hour.
Right, okay.
And so we accumulate about 150 miles a day, maybe.
Okay, oh, very good, very good. Wow.
Well, let me explain this too.
Yeah, go ahead.
The main thing is the charger on the roof. That's what separates it from every other vehicle. But we also have two other opportunities to charge. Inside here, we have a connector that looks just like an electric forklift connector. So we can plug a small charger into it. It'll charge in about 8 hours. We also have these connectors right here that allow us to use this particular charger right here, the shop charger.
Right.
And while we have it in the shop, it's primarily for maintenance purposes. We're going to bring the bus in, we're going to do an inspection, and if you like, you want to try plugging it in.
And how long does this one take to charge?
This one, with a single cable hooked up, will take about an hour to charge the batteries fully.
So you got these.
And it's not exactly the connector that Grandma would want to hook up to her car.
Where do you plug in here?
Either one of those connectors.
Either one of these here, and you just
slide it in.
Do I lift this up?
You got to wiggle it back and forth a little bit.
There we go.
Slide it all the way in till there you go.
Okay, and
now
then
pull the handle up, and you switch it on, and away we go.
Take this baby for a ride. Hey, what is this kneeling bus? What is that?
Well, it actually does, and this bus is capable of it kneeling just the front, just the side, or
like
the whole
Roy
thing.
Rogers' horse.
You got it.
Wow.
And that's for guys like me when you get to be a senior citizen. It's sometimes a rough step.
Cool. Let's go, Norton.